May 8, 1945, 9 a.m. in the White House. President Truman announces the surrender of the German forces.
This is a solemn but a glorious hour. I only wish that Franklin D. Roosevelt had lived to witness this day. General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations.
The war was over, but people's minds lingered on the past atrocities, casualties among their friends and families, and their miserable economic state. The recent conflicts were very much in everyone's minds, and they needed some kind of reassurance. The Nuremberg trials provided the compromise and reconciliation that people needed. 13 separate trials took place at Nuremberg to provide the war-weary people some closure from the recent shock and strife in their lives. The Nuremberg trials aimed to expose groups who had committed crimes against peace, like members of the Gestapo or high-ranking officials of the Schutzstaffel, also known as Himmler's infamous SS, and bring some justice and order to the reigning chaos. One of these trials shined a spotlight on the activities of the infamous chemical company responsible for fueling Germany's war engine and aiding numerous atrocities. This was the sixth trial. It put a set of businessmen, engineers, and scientists on the dock. The I.G. Farben trial. The I.G. Farben trial was also known as the United States of America versus Karl Crouch. It tried the high-standing officials of the I.G. Farben Chemical Company, later dubbed the Devil's Chemists, for their actions during the war.
The trial commenced on August 27, 1947, and ended on June 11, 1948. This was the second of three trials against leading industrialists of Nazi Germany for helping the Nazis wage their genocidal war. The other two trials against industrialists were the Flick and Krupp trials. Prosecutors listed 4 charges against the company. Charge 1, planning, preparation, initiation, and waging wars of aggression and invasions of other countries. Charge 2, war crimes and crimes against humanity through plunder and spoliation. Charge 3, war crimes and crimes against humanity through slavery and mass murder. Charge 4, membership in the SS. I.G. Farben mass-produced Zyklon B, a chemical used in gas chambers at Auschwitz, Majdanek, Warsaw, and others. Zyklon B was responsible for the mass extermination of millions of innocent people. After Germany was cut off from the Chilean nitrate trade after World War I, I.G. Farben created a synthetic nitrate to manufacture explosives such as gunpowder, TNT, and dynamite exclusively for the Nazis during World War II. A subsidiary company under the direction of the accused created synthetic gasoline, rubber, and processed metals. I.G. Farben sold these products to the Nazis for the manufacturing of military transportation. I.G. Farben monopolized resources by making hostile acquisitions in territories that the Nazis overran. The prosecution presented evidence showing I.G. Farben's demand for control over companies in the territories that the Nazis had subjugated, like this letter to the Reich Minister of Economics.
At its peak, I.G. Farben had approximately 180,000 slaves. A factory was built directly beside the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp and used forced slave labor. Along with producing chemicals, this factory participated in the experiments on humans carried out in the concentration camps. The prosecutors presented evidence that none of these experiments contributed to the betterment of society. The experiments performed on the poor inmates were too gruesome to show here. Defendants Schneider, Butefisch, and von der Heide were accused of membership in the SS. Butefisch was a member of the Kepler Circle, subsequently known as the Friends of Himmler. Prosecutors used this in an attempt to prove that he was a member of the SS.
For the first indictment, waging acts of war, the defense argued that the evidence presented by the prosecution was not sufficient enough to show that the accused engaged in any sort of war crimes. For the second indictment, plunder and spoliation, the defense contended that since there was no act of aggression or war, charges of plunder and spoliation do not apply. For the third indictment, slavery and mass murder, the defense tried to similarly prove that the accused did not directly engage in the activities that they were accused of. For the fourth indictment, membership in the SS, the defense claimed that the accused were merely honorary or sponsoring members of the SS, and that they were unaware of their malicious intent. After reviewing the case in its entirety, presiding Judge Curtis Grover Shake, formerly Judge of the Supreme Court of Indiana, Judge James Morris, Judge of the Supreme Court of North Dakota, Judge Paul M. Hebert, Dean of the Law School, Louisiana State University, and Judge Clarence F. Merrill, member of the Bar of the State of Indiana, finally delivered their summation, though behind the scenes they were not unanimous. Carl Crouch was sentenced to 6 years in prison for the third indictment, slavery and mass murder. Of the total 24 defendants, 1 was acquitted due to medical reasons, and 13 were sentenced to terms in prison, ranging from 1.5 years to 8 years, including time already served.
All of the judges concurred that the defendants should be held accountable for Charge 3, slavery and mass murder. Judge Hebert filed an additional dissenting opinion as to why the accused should be charged. According to Hebert, the defense's case that I.G. Farben only used slave labor in compliance with the Third Reich and out of necessity was not applicable. Part of his dissent included this paragraph summarizing why he believed the defense was not feasible. It stated, quote, "I concur in the conviction of the 5 defendants found guilty by the tribunal, but I am of the opinion that the criminal responsibility goes much further than merely embracing the 5 defendants most immediately connected with the construction of Farben's Auschwitz plant. In my view, all the members of Farben's Vorstand should be held guilty under count 3 of the indictment, not only for the participation by Farben in the crime of enslavement at Auschwitz, but also for Farben's widespread participation and willing cooperation with the slave labor system in the other Farben plants."
World War II, with the long conflict between nations, had left bitterness and frustration in its wake. The Nuremberg trials were able to alleviate some of this resentment and frustration. People understood that justice may be incomplete, but they were ready to compromise, accept the verdicts, and move on. It was tacit that the sentences meted out to the defendants could not equate to the cruelty and atrocities committed by the Nazis, but this was a compromise that the world accepted. The end of the trial brought a sense of closure to the open wounds of war. These next few clips show multiple prosecutors summing up the trial.
Justice Jackson delivers his summing up.
According to the testimony of each defendant, these men saw no evil, spoke none, and none was uttered in their presence. To say of these men that they are not guilty, it would be as true to say there has been no war, there are no slain, there has been no crime.
Sir Hartley Shawcross delivers his summation.
This trial must form a milestone in the history of civilization, not only marking that right shall in the end triumph over evil, but also that ordinary people of the world, and I make no distinction here between friend and foe, are now determined that the individual must transcend the state.
These harsh statements summed up the trial and were good ways to encapsulate the oppression of those that Germany brutalized.